not exactly my right.
To be part of Vivienne Westwood's army, I think it's about...
Well, it feels a lot better than being in the real army, I suppose.
Empowering.
taking affirmative action in changing something.
If I was going to go to war, it'd definitely be with Vivienne.
Head to toe Vivienne Westwood, of course.
It's that punk
Do I
spirit.
love what I'm wearing? Am I a fan? Of course.
Don't get killed. Don't get killed.
Happy New Year, world. Vivienne Westwood, punk, dame, designer, rebel, millionaire, mother, radical. All words one could use to describe Vivienne Westwood, a woman who is perhaps the most influential British designer the world has ever seen. In an industry predominantly created to showcase beauty, Westwood uses her skills to advocate higher causes through her passion for art, history, and social justice. In doing so, she redefined what being a designer could represent, inspiring a wave of others dedicated to using fashion as a means of sparking cultural change.
My thing as a fashion designer, I say buy less clothes. Keep wearing things that you've really chosen that you love, and that is status.
Westwood was born in 1941 in the village of Tintwistle, Derbyshire. Her parents, Gordon and Dora, had met 2 years previously at the onset of the Second World War. She was the eldest of 3 children, in a family far removed from the English elite. Gordon worked as a storekeeper in an aircraft factory, whilst Dora helped make ends meet by working in a local cotton mill.
When I was just at school, I'd be about 4 or 5, I used to live next to a wood, and I daydreamed that I would be sort of walking through this wood and I'd have this little house under these tree roots, and that this is where I lived. But meanwhile, when I was walking, I would have this fantastic dress and just come upon 1 or 2 little boys that I knew who'd just really be impressed by this dress. When I was little, I did not think of myself as pretty at all. For a start, I had straight brown hair, and if you were pretty, it was supposed to be these golden curls. And Shirley Temple was the model for children in those days. But nevertheless, I always had this idea that somehow I could make myself better, that one day I would be able to do something.
Nevertheless, Westwood was always close with her parents, who imbued her with a confidence and self-sufficiency rarely seen in a woman of her generation. She would often be found wandering the countryside of Derbyshire, climbing trees and jumping streams in a manner most parents would disapprove of for a young girl. I liked being me, and I happened to be a girl. I wanted to be a hero, and saw no reason why a girl couldn't be one.
I was making my own clothes a lot, even tailored suits by the time I was about 16. But I never had the idea of working in fashion, never. Eventually I went to teacher training college when I was 18, with the idea that I would take art as my main subject, and if it worked out that'd be all right, and if it didn't then I'd be a school teacher. So I became a school teacher.
Her heroism developed through her schooling years. Despite her enjoyment at school, she was a proficient reader. Westwood saw herself as a kind of champion for the marginalised, standing up to authority figures at the behest of others who could not or would not stand up for themselves. On numerous occasions in class, she would take the blame for actions that were not her own, testing the boundaries of authority figures such as teachers and finding fulfilment in the glamour of the self-righteous.
I'm the only fashion designer who really cares so much to analyse what they do in broader cultural terms. That's the only way that I can stimulate my intelligence.
Despite a love of education, her parents were wary of the abstract knowledge of books, preferring Westwood to learn the more practical knowledge of tradecraft. Gordon and Dora hailed from generations of grocers and shoemakers, and both were deftly skilled with their hands. Dora, in particular, was a gifted seamstress who insisted on sewing all of the clothes for her children. Vivienne's parents moved to Harrow, London in 1958, overseeing the running of a local post office. Westwood, 17 at the time, enrolled in the nearby Harrow School of Art to study as a silversmith, but after a single semester she opted to drop out of the school for good. It was one of the few times in her life her infallible sense of confidence failed her. I didn't know how a working class girl like me could possibly make a living in the art world. Westwood instead took a job at a factory, while studying at a teacher training college and eventually becoming a fully certified primary school teacher. By 1963, her life was seemingly on track towards the inconsequential. Vivienne had married Derek Westwood, a handsome mod who ran dance halls and aspired to become an airline pilot. Within the same year, she gave birth to her first son, Ben. Derek was a dedicated father and a supportive husband, but Vivienne was anxious in the role of the matriarch. I wasn't happy. I wasn't content looking after my child. I needed to know more of the world. Vivienne left Derek a few months after the birth of Ben and was back to living with her parents above the latest in a series of post offices they now ran, continuing to work as a teacher and selling handmade jewellery on the side. But in 1965, everything would change for Westwood. Her brother, who was studying at a local art school, would often invite friends back to the post office. One in particular, a pale redhead by the name of Malcolm McLaren, was particularly drawn to Vivienne and offered to help craft her jewellery.
Well, people are sick everywhere. People are sick and fed up of this country, telling them what to do.
It's the interesting thing with talking about Malcolm McLaren and Vivienne Westwood. You know, Malcolm McLaren was very negative about Vivienne Westwood because of just calling her a seamstress, whereas they couldn't have done what they did without each other, because Malcolm McLaren really was just a guy, a really fun, great guy. But if he wasn't wearing that seditionaries, or if he wasn't wearing pirate outfits, those extended shoulders with the curtain stripes and the cod pieces and the huge boots and the sneakers with the 10 tongues and the gigantic Vivienne Westwood hat, if he wasn't wearing that, he'd just be another Cockney guy that was a fast-talking Brit. But she allowed him, she evolved him by, when you look at him, I remember looking at Face magazines, a photo of him just jumping in her outfit. The outfit was what appealed to me. But then again, on the other side of it, Vivienne Westwood, he managed Bow Wow Wow. He looked after so many bands, and they were all wearing Vivienne Westwood. So it was because of him that Vivienne was given her wings. It was because of Malcolm McLaren that Vivienne was allowed to be part of that cult movement.
I was very impressed by his designs, Westwood recalled. They were very mod. Malcolm persisted in the pursuit of Westwood, who eventually succumbed to the advances of the 19-year-old McLaren. A few weeks later, Westwood was pregnant for the second time. McLaren was a chaotic figure, born into supreme family dysfunction. He held no interest in being a father and secured the money for Vivienne to have an abortion. But on the way to the clinic, she had a change of heart, spending the money on a cashmere twin set instead. Westwood's second son, Joseph Correa, was born in March of 1967. His surname was dedicated to McLaren's grandmother, Rose Correa, the same woman who only months beforehand had paid for Westwood to have him aborted.
Vivienne is so fascinating because she's self-taught and her creative process is driven by her thirst for knowledge and her investment in her own cultural investigations. So, you get out what you put in.
True to his word, McLaren was utterly disinterested in fatherhood. He showed up 6 days after the birth of Joe to visit Westwood, and in the ensuing months continuously reminded her of how unattached to his child he was. Their relationship was acrimonious at the best of times. After separating from McLaren in 1968, Vivienne quit work to take care of her sons, living out of a caravan with no running water in a remote part of Wales. Though Vivienne had returned to him more than once, in recent years she stated she never wanted to be with McLaren, but found herself overwhelmed by his obsession for her, that manifested itself in emotionally and sometimes physically abusive behaviour.
Malcolm started to work on this group, the Sex Pistols, But we started in fashion together before that, and I started fashion to help him. I didn't want to do it.
But Westwood herself was obsessed, fascinated with his unique perspective on the arts and disregarding authority. Two long-standing passions that had fallen by the wayside. I latched onto Malcolm as somebody who opened doors for me. I mean, he seemed to know everything I needed at the time. McLaren was instrumental in changing her look from Dolly Bird to a chic and confident woman. He made her wear outlandish outfits, such as a schoolgirl uniform with red latex tights, in an effort to erode her confidence by dressing her like a prostitute. Her new look only emboldened Vivienne's independent streak and her renewed passion for design. Together, the tumultuous couple opened a boutique in 1971 named Let It Rock.
But at that time, my boyfriend, Malcolm McLaren, had left college and he wanted some help with a project that he was interested in. And that involved me making clothes. Malcolm and I, we were interested in rebellion. So at the time when people were still wearing platforms and flared trousers, this is when we had our teddy boy look. Soon after that we got bored and we changed the shop each time we had a new interest. Nowadays I would present a collection.
After flirting with several styles, rockabilly, mod and greaser, McLaren stumbled across the punk movement during a trip to the New York Underground and decided to import it to the United Kingdom.
So here at number 430 Kings Road is the famous shop that used to be called Let It Rock. It was opened by Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren back in the 1970s, and that's exactly where they launched the Sex Pistols from in 1975.
This used to be called Sex or Seditionaries. Now it's World's End. It's the most famous shop on Kings Road. It's number 430, and it's owned by Vivienne Westwood. So that's the mountain hat from the 80s.
Nice. Well, that looks like a kind of Boy George hat.
That's the same era.
Yeah.
It's still handmade in London.
Nice.
It's a little Alice in Wonderland store, very tiny, but very powerful and really influential in the history of London fashion. Also with Galliano and McQueen, Vivienne is a clear influence on them as well.
McLaren and Westwood changed their boutique's name to Sex and embraced the punk ethos and its anti-authoritarian stance.
When this appeared in the charts in the late 70s, millions realised something was afoot. Punk rock had been born, and this man claimed that he was responsible. Malcolm McLaren was the man behind the Sex Pistols, and for a few frantic and furious months in which gigs were banned, fights broke out, and hundreds of thousands of records were sold, he was the grinning, fast-talking heart of a cultural revolution.
The popularity of punk rock was, in effect, due to the fact that it made ugliness beautiful. The nihilism all led to an anti-design, anti-fashion, anti-social, anti-establishment, a we hate everything vibe that became immensely and immeasurably attractive.
An art school dropout, he'd first come to notice selling clothes on London's King's Road with his partner Vivienne Westwood. But his real skill was as the Barnum of teenage rebellion.
Punk was an evolution, a synthesis of putting all these things together that we were interested in. I think that punk rock was the most heroic rock and roll movement that there's ever been. I do stand by that. I think it was a fantastic thing to do. It was something I believed in at the time. I think Johnny Rotten really believed in it in the beginning, that somehow we were going to keep on attacking all the icons of the establishments because we wanted the world to be different. We were always literary and graphic about our ideas, and we put them on T-shirts. And at one time we were busted under the Obscene Publications Act for holding an indecent exhibition. I was in court about 4 times after that, and I was threatened with prison at that point. Luckily, I'd stopped being so interested in it by then, so I didn't have to go to prison.
You know, it's true. Vivienne Westwood doesn't get that much credit for seditionaries. Or no, doesn't get much credit for wardrobing and dressing Sex Pistols. Nor does she get credit for the Bow Wow Wow, nor does she get credit for Fun Boy 3, and nor does she get credit for Bananarama. Like, all of those bands, they all lived in London.
While McLaren recruited a band to model their attire, most of the fashion we now associate with punk, from spiked dog collars to clothes strung together with safety pins, were designed and constructed by Westwood in the couple's South London apartment. I particularly loved my sex look, my rubber stockings and the t-shirt with pornographic images and my stilettos and spiky hair. I stopped the traffic in my rubber negligee.
Shop called Sex and Kings Road, they were printing on the street. So people were literally getting a panel, they're like, I want to buy that panel. So they were pinning the panel onto another t-shirt to sell it. So by default or by supreme global universal understanding, the safety pin that was affixing all those things became a staple to that fast, hard life of the Sex Pistols that, you know, Malcolm was responsible for, Vivienne Westwood was responsible for.
McLaren was a superlative promoter who used the success of his band, the Sex Pistols, to take their boutique to new heights of success, while Westwood pushed boundaries of what punk could represent, incorporating politically taboo messages with scandalous bondage themes as a means of shocking the establishment and disrupting the status quo. One such instance is the infamous Destroy shirt, emblazoned with an enormous swastika across the front. Even in her later age, Westwood has no regret about her design choices. We were just saying to the older generation, we don't accept your values or your taboos, and you're all fascists. In 1977, the punk influence had infected all of Britain. The Sex Pistols were the biggest band in the country, and off the back of their success, the boutique, now labelled Seditionaries, had become the epicentre of the movement. Thousands of disenfranchised youths across the country were wearing designs either created or inspired by Westwood. But once more in her life, Westwood lacked contentment. Her dedication to the punk movement had come at a cost. Westwood has acknowledged that she was an unfit mother at the time, stating, "I neglected my children because I had to do certain things, which meant that I couldn't be there for them. In order to do fashion, because at the time, I thought fashion was a kind of a crusade." To make matters worse, McLaren refused to share the success of bringing punk to the mainstream, referring to Vivienne only as his seamstress and denying her the design credit she deserved. But her true dissatisfaction with punk came in the ideology. For McLaren, punk was a sustained disruption of order, chaos for the pure sake of chaos. But for Westwood, punk was a social change through radical action, a means to confront the rotten status quo through the way I dressed and dressed others. I was messianic about punk, seeing if one could put a spoke in the system in some way. Under the guidance of McLaren, the punk movement had become a circus of hedonism and aimless rebellion, not the revolutionary battle cry Westwood was hoping for. When I turned round on the barricades, there was no one there. That was how it felt. They were just pogoing, so I lost interest.
It was just a fashion that became a marketing opportunity for people, and it's great nowadays to see young people dressed as a punk. But, you know, because it's entered into the iconography of I am a rebel, and that's what I look like if I want to be that kind of rebel.
By the early 1980s, Vivienne had tired of the punk ethos and yearned to push her sense of design to new places. She and McLaren remodelled the boutique one final time, naming it World's End. And in 1981, the pair launched their first catwalk collection, Pirate.
It was world's end still. And I said to him, well, you're right, Malcolm, either I've got to help you in the music business, because the Sex Pistols have just gone, or we work together in the fashion business. We can't do both. Fashion every time, he said. He said, you've got to be the front of this fashion business. And he said, what you need to do is you need to do a catwalk show, and it should be under your own name. It should be under Vivienne Westwood. So I did. I thought, I'll do what other designers do. I started looking at history, French Revolution, you know, all those merveilleuses and these incroyables from the French Revolution. So it was the idea of let's plunder the world. That's how the clothes became the pirate idea, that we would get our ideas from history and from the third world. I've always been able to go direct to the public. Getting that little shop a long time ago has always been a base. That's always been something that's been a refuge in terms of keeping going.
The collection consisted of clothes influenced by the golden age of buccaneers and highwaymen, and was an instant hit with the fashion world. Westwood was no longer rattling the establishment from the outside. She was actively working within mainstream culture to influence change. McLaren and Westwood followed pirates with a number of collections she later grouped under the banner New Romantic. Each collection was profoundly different from the next, as Westwood flexed her creative muscles. Savage's Spring 1981 was influenced by Native American patterning with a twist of the Foreign Legion. Nostalgia of Mud, Autumn 1982, embraced enormous tattered shirts and sheepskin jackets saturated in muddy colours. Punkature, Spring 1983, drew inspiration from Ridley Scott's dystopian sci-fi classic Blade Runner, whilst Witches, Autumn 1983, conjured the magical, esoteric sign language of the New York graffiti artist Keith Haring. Witches proved to be the final collaboration between McLaren and Westwood. After over 10 years, the couple dissolved their tormented relationship. Free from her previous constraints, Westwood began to find her true voice as a designer. She began to draw a great deal of inspiration from the annals of history, sourcing ideas from the literary and cultural expertise of Gary Ness, a former painter with whom Westwood had developed a close bond. Westwood saw a fellow ideological iconoclast in Ness, someone she could rail against the barricades with, who could help her say exactly what she wanted to through fashion.
She loves art and literature and philosophy and science, and she gets all of her ideas from there. She's led an incredible life and has been on vast voyages of discovery, self-discovery, and is extremely creative.
Vivienne Westwood is known for delving way into British and French culture, 18th, 17th century, crinolines, hoop skirts, bustiers and, fabrications that look like curtains and very rich brocades. She's kind of a theorist that was almost a costumer, by then reinterpreting the costumes and just making them current, allowed her to have that English eccentricity and that homage to England, but making those garments relevant. There was a model called Sarah Stockbridge, the bleached model, so they had her bleached hair like she was Madonna at that time. But in one of her runway shows, she wore a crown and she had like this full-on brocade crinoline, kind of talking about being the queen of fashion.
By shirking the futurist conventions of fashion and turning to the past for inspiration, Westwood found greater success in her future than she could ever have imagined. One of Westwood's first major accomplishments as a solo designer was the Mini Crinny of 1985. Combining the tutu with an abbreviated form of the Victorian crinoline, it was a simultaneous rejection of the masculine shoulder pads popular at the time, and a cultural homage to the classic Russian ballet Pritushka. Following the Mini Crinny, a random encounter with a young woman in London proved the inspiration for one of Westwood's most iconic collections, the Harris Tweed of Autumn-Winter 1987. My whole idea for this collection was stolen from a little girl I saw on the tube one day. She couldn't have been more than 14. She had a little plaited bun, a Harris tweed jacket, and a bag with a pair of ballet shoes in it. She looked so cool and composed standing there. The collection, partially inspired by the British royal family, and notable for its use of 18th century corsets, was a runway success and cemented her position as one of the most influential designers in the world. Westwood continued to find sartorial inspiration by delving into the catacombs of cultural history. Pagan Eye, for example, was an eccentric mix of traditionally British fabrics and pagan design elements, with patterns procured from the pornographic images of ancient Greece. Time Machine, 1988 to 89, was of a similar eclectic design. Named after the eponymous H.G. Wells novel, the collection used tweed to construct suits modelled after medieval armour. And Cut and Slash of 1991 took its layered textile design from a 16th century French tradition, in which they would cut and prick fabric in such a way that it would last for hundreds of years. Vivienne Westwood was one of the most established names in fashion by the mid-90s. Her fascination with the cultural histories of the French and English saw her create some of the most inspired designs of the time. Some of the designs were almost unwearable by conventional standards. The 1997 collection, Women Do Not Understand the Full Extent of Their Coquettishness, for instance, incorporated the use of body extensions such as padded busts and hips, along with bustles created by metal cages to create an exceptionally exaggerated hourglass silhouette. Westwood's designs often ran contrary to the fashions of her time. Her dressing up was an example of exactly that, an elaborate display of a time when economic downturns saw the majority of designers moving in the opposite direction. And as fashion increasingly became infused with minimalist aspects, Westwood remained as intricate as ever. The 2000s saw her move away from historical influence and into the textures of fabric itself, treating it as a living mass. It was Gary Ness, her cultural guru, who first saw the true potential of Vivienne Westwood. She was not a revolutionary, but a counter-revolutionary, willing to reject the bland populism of modern fashion in favour of a much higher ideal, a return to the realm of high art. Paradoxically, in her rejection of conventional trends, Westwood became a trendsetter herself, influencing dozens of designers who have taken inspiration from decades of work. Meadham Kirchhoff acknowledged their debt to Westwood in their Spring-Summer 15 collection, declaring they were forever indebted to her genius. While notable contemporary designers such as Raf Simons have spoken of their love for her unconventional and detailed designs. A major factor to her continued success comes in the form of husband Andreas Kronthaler, her loyal design partner and perhaps biggest advocate. After a decade of avoiding men following the difficulties she faced with McLaren, Vivienne met future husband Andreas while teaching at the Vienna Academy of Applied Arts. Vivienne, then 48, was impressed with Andreas's designs and invited the 23-year-old to London to work with her. He shared her vision of fashion as art and held a more supportive, collaborative disposition than McLaren could ever have imagined. They quickly became an item and married in 1993. Together, they oversaw the stratospheric rise of Vivienne Westwood Limited, which now boasts 63 outlets worldwide and has instilled Vivienne with an estimated net worth of $185 million.
From a young designer that actually changed the face of fashion at that young age with that King's Road store and just changing everything. From then, this political voice that was a small voice, but it was an activist voice, to now where it's all powerful, all seeing, and you know, she's a dame. Vivienne Westwood is iconic, is as iconic as Madonna and Michael Jackson.
Yet over the past decade, Vivienne has become less involved with the day-to-day planning of her fashion empire, preferring to use her fame and wealth to advocate numerous social causes. leaving Kronthaler with greater creative input over her company. Vivienne has publicly supported numerous causes, often using her fashion empire as a means of drawing attention to issues. The designer set a 2011 campaign against the backdrop of a Nairobi slum to advocate her partnership with the Ethical Fashion Africa program. In 2013, she drew attention to the cause of Julian Assange by using his name and image in her designs.
I went to Belmarsh Prison yesterday to see my dear, dear friend Julian Assange in Belmarsh Prison, top security jail, in solitary confinement in the hospital ward. He's allowed to speak to nobody in this place. A totally innocent man being tortured.
But by far, her greatest cause is climate change. The long-time Labour Party supporter, who swapped to the Conservative Party in 2007, is now the largest donator to the Green Party of England and Wales. In 2005, she started Active Resistance, a project designed to stimulate engagement in humanitarian and environmental issues. Many of her recent collections have centred on the concepts evoked in Active Resistance, including 50+, the 2009 collection that cultured inspiration from the predicted temperature of the Earth if climate change is left unchallenged. Nearly a decade later, Visionaire magazine, in celebration of its 68th issue, commissioned 10 artists and activists to design a digital protest poster for its 2018 readers. The idea was to address the current social issues afflicting the world and to elevate the simple protest poster through the context of art. Powerful messages from powerful people. For Visionaire selecting, Westwood was a no-brainer. The Brit designer for whom fusing art and activism was at the heart of her long career. Rather than exploring a new issue, Westwood used the platform to drive home her long-standing campaign on the effects of climate change from the active resistance era. Westwood's graphic poster depicts a bleak map of the world should the Earth's temperature rise by just 5 degrees, with all the uninhabitable parts marked in red. Outside of this moment, Vivienne Westwood continues her activism on a more permanent scale, offering a line of protest t-shirts alongside the main brand. Her latest takedown is aimed at a pro-fracking sponsor of the 2021 America's Cup.
Why is it so important, the fracking debate, to you?
Well, first of all, these governments are anti-people. It's not going to help people. And it's crazy, and everything they say, point by point, is completely untrue.
Vivienne has used her celebrity in a number of different ways to draw attention to her causes, including shaving her hair off to draw attention to the issue of climate change and appearing in a PETA ad campaign to promote World Water Day in order to highlight the water consumption involved in the meat industry. Her crusade against climate change has found her squarely at odds with the industry that generated her fame. She is a staunch opponent of the wastefulness in fast fashion. There is an air of contradiction surrounding Westwood in this sense. She decries the fashion industry as she profits from it, and bemoans the influence of advertising whilst creating celebrated campaigns with some of the highest profile photographers in the world. Westwood rails against the establishment while at the same time instilling herself as an essential component, socializing with billionaires like Richard Branson and appearing on talk shows in ludicrously expensive silk dresses, whilst complaining about the wasteful state of the bourgeois. And yet it doesn't feel hypocritical. What I'm doing now is still punk. It's still about shouting about injustice and making people think, even if it's uncomfortable. I'll always be a punk in that sense. Perhaps that's the key to Westwood's success. Long after the chaos-inducing punks have burned out to their ineffectual ends, Vivienne Westwood is still standing strong. She made a conscious decision to move from the sneering outcasts to a member of the social elite, using her social stature to challenge the status quo and find people willing to rail against the barricades with her. She has moved from putting a spoke in the system to being a spoke in the system, earning a mantle of Britain's most inspirational designer along the way.
It's a platform to talk about other things that are much more important: the environment, the world, life, third world countries, child labour, manufacturing in countries that actually can't support that infrastructure. You know, she's renowned for being a vocal, militant designer, using her brand and using her voice to expose companies and people. Rarely do you see brands do that. It's her confidence. I mean, it's not gratuitous, and that's what's so amazing.
You can't have opinions unless you form opinions, and you need something to form opinions with. Today everybody's got their opinion, but it's just the first thing that comes in their head, and it's worthless. Don't go to the Tate Modern, because that's totally superficial. You've got to realise that there's no progress in art. One truth is no more true than another. And if you look at these windows on the past, it's like going much, much further than your own lifetime. I mean, everybody, if you review your own life, you saw the world differently 1 year ago. You saw it differently, definitely 10 years ago, and when you were a child. And I know my mother, when she was a child, would have seen the world differently than I did when I was a child. There's all these different points of view on the world, and that's what art does for us. It tells the truth about a vision of the world at different points in time, but we understand it because of our common humanity. And I believe that art, music, whatever it is, reading the best stuff, whatever, going to theatre, I believe that this is the best education you can get, because it's self-education. You are getting it for yourself. If you invest in art, if you study yourself art, you become a freedom fighter immediately, because your life changes. You get off the consumer treadmill, you start thinking.
And for those who consider Westwood too far removed from her early days of punk, consider this. When the woman who dressed the band famous for God Save the Queen received her damehood in 2006, she did so wearing a beautifully tailored dress and no knickers. A true symbol of her anarchic character. From the Pirate collection of 1981, alongside McLaren, right up to the Spring-Summer 19 show, presented by Andreas Kronthaler, the brand continues to deliver all the theatrical and absurdist high notes we have come to expect of a Vivienne Westwood runway, with antics that stem from its activist roots. Kronthaler's vision transformed a Parisian garage into an installation of creative chaos for the latest unveiling. A cloud-like structure sat at its centre like the eye of the storm, whilst men on ladders painted the air and bodybuilders whizzed nonsensically by. Critics are quick to point out the distraction it poses, yet despite all the chaos, those distractions continue to cut through and have a positive financial impact on the brand, with Vivienne Westwood remaining one of the houses to ride out the economic storm, with the bulk of its sales concentrated in the UK. This Westwood effect is certainly not lost on Riccardo Tisci. The current creative director for Burberry courted a Westwood collaboration, wanting to inject her unique representation of British style into a reimagined works from the Burberry archive. The collection will feature Burberry's signature check print together with the punk sensibilities of Westwood, and will fall under a new logo created for the limited edition line that merges the signature branding of Burberry and Westwood. In line with the philanthropy of the houses, the profits with the unique capsule collection will go towards the Cool Earth organisation's fight against deforestation. A dedicated patron of Cool Earth, Westwood recently attended the new location launch of Cool Earth affiliate, restaurant Sushi Samba. Aside from furthering her causes, the 77-year-old's continued presence on the British social scene helps to keep her connected with a younger audience. Not that she needs to in order to stay relevant.
The Westwood brand continues to speak to the British people who are disenfranchised by the current age of the global financial crisis, climate change, terrorism, and political upheaval. Her clothes and brand, by association, offer the youth of today the same outlet for provocation and rebellion as it gave to the punk rebellion of the late 60s and 70s. For this reason, Westwood caught the attention of documentary filmmaker Lorna Tucker. Her recent film, Westwood, Punk Icon and Activist, aired at the Doc Lisboa Annual Film Festival and was an intimate portrait of the woman and designer behind the iconic brand. Tucker states, punk is once again the global style trend of discontent. People worldwide are unhappy about everything from Brexit to right-wing politics, and punk is once again turning to the visual language of their grievances. The genius of Vivienne Westwood is in her ability to identify that undertone and present it on a unified platform, even to the point of creating her own army of freedom fighters. For her Autumn-Winter 18 campaign, Vivienne pulled together a collective of conceptual artists and activists to continue her work. Instead of a runway, a short film of streetcast models talk empowerment and rebellion.
I designed a set of playing cards, which is a strategy to save the whole world. Collect the cards, connect the cards. I am here at a photo shoot for our new collection, and it's got a theme of war running through it.
A sentiment of war permeated the collection, a sort of call to arms for those wishing to use clothes as a tool for change and free expression. Shot in a London between the studio and the neighbourhood of Parsons Green, Vivienne garbed her muses in deconstructed tailoring, camouflage, and regimental details, set amongst the prayer flags she designed not just as a message or artistic point, but as a strategy to save the world. In the latter stages of her life, blunt tactics are the way forward for Vivienne's vision. Don't Get Killed is just the start of her awakening tactics to a life where climate change and mass extinction are no longer on the cards. Beyond the film, 6 of Vivienne's creatives from the Autumn-Winter Army have contributed to some of the unique perspectives on offer through the brand's main site, sharing their artistic projects and social agendas for the next generation. The UK has a history steeped in revolution, change that was ignited by trailblazers like Westwood herself, whom, while still actively charging against injustice, is ensuring that her legacy will extend beyond her own years. It is this dedication to a cause, her natural authenticity, that has made Westwood the voice for not just any one generation, nor institution for that matter. Whether designing for the royals or pirate commoners, Vivienne makes ideas accessible by transforming the fashion world into a discourse for those very ideas, symbols that just happen to be great clothes. She has fulfilled her own prophecy as a young girl, becoming the hero, nay, queen of the fashion world, that British renegade who defined the rebellion behind the punk movement and gave us originality in spades, the one and only Dame Vivienne Westwood.